The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back. Giants baseball, past, present, and future. And we've got the spring training Michael Duca with us as we go. How are you, sir?
Well, it's a true statement that I left my heart in San Francisco, Ralph.
You've been gone, like 30 some odd days on the road. If anybody doesn't know what that's like, living out of a suitcase, every day a new itinerary, every day a new city, back to your home base, start again the next day. It's kind of a work-play vacation, but there doesn't seem to be all that much play in it. Am I correct?
Well, it's true. My last 2 days, I had back-to-back doubleheaders. I started at Scottsdale Stadium on Monday and went all the way to the other side of the valley to Camelback Ranch, where I was sitting in the press box, and I could actually hear Justin Turner's wrist break when the pitch hit him.
Ooh.
And then the next day, I was Salt River Field, which is North Scottsdale, and then Peoria. But the traffic down here has become fairly serious. It's, they seem to be building freeways constantly, and it's never enough. The population of the Phoenix metro area now makes it either the fifth or sixth largest city in the country, depending on whose census estimate you want to use in between censuses. But it's essentially the same size as Houston. Mm-hmm. And, it's completely devoted to cars. It's rare that you'll see a bus on the street. There are some streetcar lines here, but they're extremely limited, and I'm not sure how well they are utilized. I've ridden it myself to go to a Suns game because I didn't want to spend $24 to park downtown. But I got to tell you, the night that I did that, the streetcar was not jam-packed full.
Incredible, because they don't have freeways as in the same context as Bay Area freeways. Am I correct? They're just side roads.
They have freeways upon freeway. I mean, they have the 101 loop is like a C sitting on its ends that goes from the west side of the valley around the top side of the valley, the north side, and then back down the east side to the 202 loop, which is like a C turns backwards. It goes from downtown far out into Mesa and then south down towards Queen Creek and comes back to meet I-10 as it's headed to Tucson. And out on the west side of town on the I-10, which goes to L.A., they're currently constructing an enormous interchange for when the 202 gets finished all the way around behind South Mountain and Ahwatukee and comes back up to connect. So they're going to have several ring roads or loop freeways. But the problem is that as the suburbs and exurbs get pushed further and further out from the city center, they keep building these ring roads, but there's really nothing that crisscrosses them. So if I want to go from Scottsdale to Surprise, there's no freeway that goes east to west in the north part of the valley. You have to get onto the loop and use that to go east to west. And, and there's so much traffic here that it becomes, for me to get from Scottsdale to Glendale on Monday, which is about 24 miles, was an hour and 45 minutes.
Oh, wow. Whoa, indeed. That really does sound like the Bay Area, which sounded like the New York metropolitan area 50 years ago. One of the reasons that I came out west to stay was the traffic. If you're successful in the New York area, you live in the suburbs, and you exchange an hour and a half commute time each way sometimes for the privilege of being wealthy and living in the big city. It's craziness, and it's just as bad in San Francisco as it was back then. in New York, and I can assure you in 5 years it'll be just as bad where you're spring training right now.
I mean, they're building freeways here with 5 and 6 lanes on a side, and it's still not enough.
Well, if this is such a national catastrophe, we have traffic jams in every part of town. Doesn't good sense tell us to go to an overall public transportation system that works, where you get people off the freeways and you get them out of their cars and you make it worthwhile, either by reducing the fares, at least initially, until people are used to using the mode of transportation, or just simply expanding commuter lanes. I mean, that's another something that can be done. But hey, I'm not a city planner. I think our dependence on the automobile is horrendous. That just plain and simple.
We're far afield from baseball here, Ralph. But I will tell you this. I'm not sure what comes to mind for you when I say the phrase "the American dream." But
Talie in the morning.
Yeah.
That's about all I can think of.
The thing that comes across to most, when you say that to most people outside of the United States, what does it mean to you to pursue the American dream?
A house, a garage, 2 cars in the garage.
The American dream is much older than that. It's much older than cars. The American dream is unlimited land. And to have unlimited land, you need to have unlimited mobility. And the automobile is unlimited mobility, and public transit is not. And it really gets that close to the core of what it means to pursue the American dream. You're absolutely right. 2 cars in every garage. Why do you need 2 cars in every garage? Because that's the American dream. Mm-hmm. It gives you the freedom of mobility. The thing that set us apart from most other nations, starting from the very beginning of our existence, was that you weren't restricted in where you could go.
Good point. Kind of brings to mind free agency in baseball when you think about it, the American dream, just to have the freedom and the opportunity to perform your art anywhere you want to perform it. And
one piece of the American dream that applies to baseball that we can talk about for 10 seconds, because that's about all I know about it. But we seem to be undergoing our monthly, oh no, the government's going to shut down if we don't pass another continuing resolution bill. And this continuing resolution had slid into it a little amendment that exempts minor league baseball from labor laws, which will derail a 2-year-old class action suit filed by a former San Francisco Giants minor leaguer who thinks, for whatever misbegotten reason, Ralph, that minor league baseball players between the ages of 18 and 24, roughly, ought to be earning minimum wage.
I don't understand the thinking behind that, and I don't understand the ramifications. What minimum wage for minor league players? Okay,
would roughly
would they have to do? Would they have to do it with? Would baseball have to cheat on it, circumvent it? Is the word I'm looking for? With a bonus system. In other words, if you're giving a guy a bonus to sign and you're paying him $500 a month, is he earning the bonus plus the...
He's only earning the bonus when he receives the check. That pay period, he's clearly making more.
Okay.
But all the time that he's making $500 a month in the minor leagues with a $14 $14 per diem to eat off of. The club has requirements on them. They require them to show up in the morning for practice. They require them to spend 6 hours on the bus traveling. They require them to spend 5 hours at the park playing the game. It turns into some very long days that have some very short paychecks. Most, at the A ball level or the rookie ball level, most of the players actually live in spare bedrooms of people who live in the community and are willing to host a player for the season.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, that's how they eat also, except for the clubhouse spread, quote unquote.
Right, and they're on the bus. They stop for fast food, and it's just a life that has to be for the future. These guys that are going through it, they're not living in the present. They're dreaming about the future. And in a sense, that's the American dream. How could you curtail? Why would you put a bill out to curtail employment salary? What's his axe to grind?
Well, ownership's contention is that they have a vast investment in developing the players, and that they develop 10 to 12 players for every one that actually makes it to the major leagues and becomes a revenue source for them. The minor leagues are, for the most part, independently owned teams. They are not teams owned by major league franchises.
Mm-hmm. But the payroll of those teams are taken care of by the major team. They're independently owned, but they don't pay. The individual minor league teams don't pay the players. The major league team.
It really depends on the development contracts that an organization has with its minor league teams, because remember, those teams move around all the time. I mean, the Giants were in Fresno for years and then took over Sacramento when the A's moved to get a new stadium in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Astros had to fill in Fresno, which,
and it goes all the way down the links. In A-ball, Modesto used to be where the A's were. Now it's Colorado. Modesto is the A's are somewhere else. It does change periodically,
right?
At least,
right. And so sometimes the deal is that a certain flat sum of money is paid as a developmental expense to a minor league franchise, and they have that for operating funds and to pay the players. And sometimes the players' contracts are paid directly by the major league team's organization. In all instances, the contracts are owned. Well, again, this gets into an area that nobody's really interested in, but the differences between outrighting a player to the minor leagues and optioning him to the minor leagues means, an option technically means that his contract is optionally assigned to a minor league affiliate.
Mm-hmm.
And you will see the differences if you see in the transactions that, Ryan Rollinger's contract was purchased by the San Francisco Giants. That means that he was not on the 40-man roster, and they have to make room for him on the 40-man roster if they don't have an opening. But if so-and-so was called up, then they're on the 40-man roster, and, they're using one of their 3 option years to bring him up to the major leagues. When you have a player in the minor leagues, you have 3 option years on it. 3 different years you can bring him up and send him down as much as you want to. After 3 option years, he has to stick in the major leagues. He's out of options, or else he gets released and gets the opportunity to seek work elsewhere. And sometimes they clear waivers. This may become very relevant in the next few days. Guys who you don't have room for on the 25-man roster, they clear waivers, and then they can be assigned to your organization in the minor leagues.
Okay. That explains it. I thought when you said it initially that it was some former minor league player wanting filing suit to keep the wages down. No,
No, they were filing suit to double the wages up to minimum wage. Currently, the average player earns about, I think, $6 an hour. Is that what it works out to? Something like that.
If you include all the hours he's working, which if you include the bus trips, this, that, and the other thing.
Yep.
Yeah, that. So he wanted to double it for minimum wage, and the owners and the teams are against that. Now I understand that, of course. There are suits around the country too to include the minor leaguers in the Major League Pension Program, or if not the Major League Pension Program, have some provisions be made for a retirement program for minor leaguers that just
well, I mean, it's a difficult situation, really, if you think about it, Ralph, because if you're making $500 a month, you can't put much into a 401k. I don't care how nice the corporate match is. And if you're in the minor leagues, the last thing you want to do is say, hey, I want a pension plan and I want it to vest in just 10 years instead of 20, because nobody's going to spend 10 years in the minor leagues.
Right.
So it has to, in some form, be tied to the major league program, or have reciprocity that allows it to move to the major league program if a player goes. Otherwise, it's kind of meaningless.
Now, is baseball at risk of losing their antitrust more so than they ever were before?
No.
Okay.
I don't think they are. I mean, first of all, I'm not sure what would spark that, but no, I mean, Connie Mack's kid is no longer a senator from Florida, and he was the one who always wanted to threaten the antitrust exemption because the teams in Florida don't draw worth a damn, but, every time baseball talks about contracting them or moving them, he would say, well, if you want to discuss that, first let's talk about your antitrust exemption in Congress.
Right. So there's no clear talk or threat on the horizon for that?
Not of which I am aware.
Okay. Because I think when and if that ever happens, that will change the entire face of baseball as we know it.
Well, when and if that ever happens, first thing that's going to happen is that I think 30 different stadium authorities, or 29, 28, since the Giants and Dodgers own their stadiums, but the other publicly owned stadium authorities are going to hire extremely competent lawyers and force extremely binding contracts onto teams, because if you eliminate the antitrust exemption, then you eliminate the ability of the owners to determine essentially membership in their organization and how it functions. And right now, that includes the restriction of requiring 3/4 of the owners to agree to moving a franchise.
Mm-hmm.
As you may remember, a fellow named Al Davis challenged that particular provision in the NFL and began the sad, strange odyssey of the Oakland Nomads.
Right. Back and forth. That's craziness. All right, let's talk a little baseball, my friend, if you would. I want to remind the audience, that you're a man who sees baseball every day. You're an official scorer. You see it clearly from the press box. You, over the course of the year, you see all 30 teams. You see every player in every way. And Branch Rickey told us years ago, never fall in love in the spring or in September, if you're talking about baseball players, with baseball players. What challenged Branch Rickey's thinking for you this spring? Was there someone who stood out to you, either on the Giants, hopefully you'll say Dugar, or Duger, but around the league that you just took a look at this guy and you said, "Whoa, he's progressed from last year. He's gotten bigger. He just seems to have a new attitude." Who stood out to you the absolute most?
It would be a player that the A's acquired in the Sean Doolittle trade with the Washington Nationals last year, and that's Sheldon Neuse, Neuse. It's interesting because you can be competition for Matt Chapman at third base. He's basically a third baseman, but the ball comes off his bat loud and fast, and it goes a long way. He's just a hitting machine. He can hit the ball the other way. He uses the whole field. And while he hits line drives, I think he's hit 5 of those line drives out of the park already in the spring.
Whoa. Is he, what year is he playing in? Was he Double A last year, A?
I'm not sure where he was last year. The A's may have bumped him up to Nashville after they acquired him. I don't know where he was in the Washington organization at the time.
Okay.
One thing that has changed over the years in spring, Ralph, is that almost nobody bothers to bring media guides down for spring training and hand them out anymore because everything is available online.
Ah, okay. Including televising games, too. A lot of the games that you're covering, we're getting back here. MLB, 2 or 3 different contracts that are in line to just get the game out there.
Yep.
Now, does your trip is paid for by MLB? Your major league, minor league excursion or spring training excursion, totally. Are you paid on a per diem basis, per game basis, or is there a contract for the year? How does it work with official scores?
Well, you're asking multiple questions there. Let me backtrack a few. First of all, I'm a part-time employee of Major League Baseball through the commissioner's office in my work for MLB.com, which is both the quote-unquote pitch clock, which isn't really a pitch clock, and the data casting of games pitch by pitch onto the web for game day. And for that, I am actually a California-based hourly employee subject to California laws such as overtime.
Does travel include overtime, just out of curiosity?
I don't get compensated for travel. I actually don't get my expenses reimbursed for coming down here to work. That's on me.
Okay.
And the government and I discuss that occasionally. But as an official scorer, whole different thing. As an official scorer, I'm an independent contractor whose contract is annually renewed by the Office of the Commissioner.
Okay, and you bill them for the work that you do.
We're paid by the game, and our assignment sheet goes in and is approved at the beginning of the year so they know exactly how many games we're supposed to do before the break and after the break. We get paid twice a year. And so far, that's worked pretty well for 15 years. They haven't missed a paycheck.
Well, and you haven't missed collecting it either, which is nice because you're not volunteering anything. You know it's work. It's a labor of love, but you appreciate that you're exchanging your time for money. And the irony is, I think you would probably do it for a lot less you would have done it for a lot less if the pay system was different. It has to be wonderful from that standpoint. You're around ball and you're around people that are in the game on a constant basis. I remember you telling me about how blessed you were to share Leonard Coppett's knowledge of the game when you first started and how that was so important to you. And he's just one of many folks that you see in the press box, or God rest his soul, not him anymore, but folks that, hey, we as fans would love to hobnob with on a daily basis. And put it in reverse, these are people that love to hobnob with you. So makes for a fun work environment, if you want to still call it work.
It does. I mean, just last night I walked into the press box in Peoria, and one of my better friends amongst the scouts, former Giants catcher Terry Kennedy, son of Bob Kennedy, longtime general manager.
Yes, and a former Alamedan, Bob Kennedy, when he managed the A's out here, he lived in Alameda. So.
Yep, and Terry is that rarity in baseball, a baseball player who reads, and he reads a lot. He has 3 or 4 books going at any one time, and so whenever we get together, the first thing we talk about is either reading or writing, even before baseball. But he stopped me as I was walking by and said, "You need to, if you have not yet done so, read the ESPN article on Ichiro. It's maybe the best baseball article I've ever read." Whoa. And so I immediately, before the game started, I went over and sat down and read it, and he was right. It's an extremely impactful piece on what makes Ichiro Ichiro and how Ichiro is a completely different thing from Ichiro Suzuki.
Oh, so he's like a what's the word I'm looking for? He's just I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but he's like a Barbara, a one-word name type thing. Barbara is not Barbara Streisand in that sense.
The word you're looking for is eponymous.
That's exactly the one. Exactly the one. Thank you, my wordsmith.
Yeah,
friend.
and the first guy that I think of when you say one name gets you everything is Pele.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, there's not 10 people walking the planet who know his actual name, which is like, he's got like 5 or 6 names.
Right. And is he a good person?
Who?
Ichiro.
Ichiro. I want to leave that whole thing to people to read the article. I really want to encourage people to read this article. It's a wonderful exploration of baseball and how baseball is different in Japan than it is in the United States, and why. And how Ichiro is different from American players, and why. And what effect that's likely to have on him.
Wow. I can't wait to read it. That was an ESP article that came out yesterday on Ichiro?
It actually came out a couple of weeks ago. It's from ESPN, the magazine.
I will.
But if you just Google ESPN and Ichiro, those 2 words, you'll find it.
It'll come right up. Good.
Yep.
Did you see him this spring?
I did not.
Okay.
I have not. I haven't seen the Mariners in a few games. I mean, it's been like a week and a half since I've seen the Mariners, maybe 2. He had not yet signed when I last saw them.
Okay. I'm wondering what kind of shape he's in and how much he'll help them.
Oh, I can guarantee you, he's in the best shape a 45-year-old baseball player is possible to be in. I absolutely guarantee you that. If you read the article, you'll know why. Okay.
How about as an intellectual? What goes through his mind? Does he himself read? Is he himself interested in learning about the relationship of the Japanese ball and American ball? Would he know who Lefty Gomez is? I'll ask you that.
All right. Let me just give you one little tidbit from the article, and then I really want people to read it. So don't keep mining me for information out of the article.
That's the last question.